Welcome back to a brand new edition of Views from the Booth. I'm your host, Reed Becker, and joining me today, he is the co-host of the 643 podcast, Alex Green, and he is a contributor to fanside.com and the play-by-play announcer for the Brockton Rock's, Brett Chaves. First, guys, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having us, Reed. Pleasure to be here.
Absolutely, Reed. Pleasure for being here. Excuse me.
Now, after the Nets beat the Boston Celtics in 5 games, the next morning up in Boston, there was some huge news that kind of shook the NBA world. Boston Celtics basically redoing their franchise. You have, out of nowhere, Danny Ainge is stepping down and retiring as their president of basketball operation. And as a result of that, Brad Stevens, who was reportedly on the hot seat all season this year, despite the fact of there being tensions between him and Marcus Smart, he gets upped into the front office to take over for Danny Ainge. So I'll just start here. This move for me just completely, I was shocked, especially after being at Game 5 the night before and not expecting that at all to happen the next morning. First of all, Danny Ainge to step down out of nowhere, that's just number one for me. Was not expecting. I understand that, I mean, he's in his early 60s now, but he was criticized for not pulling the trigger soon enough for trades. And although it seems like he wasn't really forced out from what the reporting is, but that just right off the bat shocked me. But even more is Brad Stevens putting into the director of basketball operations. I mean, this is a guy that was a head coach, and although it's been reported that it kind of wore down on him specifically at the start of the bubble in Orlando last year, for somebody that was on the hot seat all year and had tensions in the locker room to get put up, be retained, and then really be put up into the front office in charge, that was mind-boggling to me. I'll go to Alex first here because he's our resident Celtics fan here. But Alex, what was your thoughts on this?
Yeah, this move was completely shocking to me. I did not expect to wake up the next morning and be that the first thing I see on my Twitter feed, on my notifications from ESPN, other sports apps. But Danny Ainge, we knew he was getting up there in age. We knew he was having some health issues and health conditions. He had a heart attack a couple years ago. So I think that was maybe part of the reason why he stepped down. And then Brad Stevens, like you said, was on the hot seat all season. I did not want him to be fired or terminated from his contract. I thought that this was just a tough season for the Celtics overall with all the injuries and the COVID issues that they had to face.
3 years, three times in 5 years, he was in the conference finals. So,
yeah, I mean, part of it isn't really his fault though. It's part of it's on Ainge for not, like you said, pulling triggers in the trade deadline and trying to improve the team during the trade deadline. But yeah, I was kind of shocked that Brad Stevens got moved up into the front office spot, and they kind of just didn't keep him as head coach and look for someone else to take over the front office. But I guess since Brad knew the team and had been there for this, I think this was his 8th year now, 8.5 years he's been there. They figured he was the best. It was better for him to stay in the organization rather than look for someone else completely brand new. So we'll see how Stevens does in the front office. Hopefully he can just spark something new into this team and hopefully bring him success for the future.
For me, I saw the Ainge move coming a while back. Like you said, Alex, he had previous heart issues. He had a heart attack. I think he had 2, actually, if I'm not mistaken. But with all the health problems and the way the Celtics were, the direction they were going the past year and a half, 2 years, I sort of expected it. But the way they handled it with bringing Brad Stevens in as president of basketball operations, I should say, I was completely thrown off guard. I mean, seeing that the guy was on the hot seat pretty much all season long and seeing how the Celtics were performing and not having as much faith in the coaching staff as they did, I'd say 2 years ago, didn't see it coming. Will I think it'd be a good move for the Celtics? Potentially. Stevens knows what the team needs, considering he was the head coach. seeing what their priorities are, what are some of their strengths and weaknesses. So I think him stepping into that role could be a potential benefit. But then again, there's also the downside of, does he know the financials? Is he going to be overwhelmed? Is he going to
No
be
front office
stressed out from all
experience.
the work?
Right.
What's that?
No front office experience.
Exactly. So I think this is a big gamble by Boston. If it pans out, he could bring the Celtics a ring. If it doesn't, this could be one of the worst moves that Celtics front office has ever made.
Now, I'm just going to skip around here because we bring this up with tensions and everything. For me, then, Marcus Smart, he has to be on the way out, I would think, after knowing that there was already tension between him and Stevens. What's going to change if he's going to go upstairs? I think, if anything, Boston needs another third star if they really want to compete. Really, now you're looking at Brooklyn, who's the favorite in the East. So you're going to need someone else, and you're not going to be able to just part with anybody. You're going to have to get rid of Marcus Smart, who's the hardest soul, really, for the past couple of years in Boston.
For me, I think you're absolutely right. I think Marcus Smart could be out the door for sure.
Let me just add this, because looking at his contract situation, he only has a year now remaining on his deal, and then he'll be an unrestricted free agent, and then you're just going to lose him for nothing.
I think that's actually a very good point. You might as well trade him and get a package in, as opposed to just letting him walk after a year and just get nothing in return. He's still a very valuable player off the bench. He can even start as well. I mean, you've seen him start and have some, pretty successful games at some points during the season. But I think a third star is definitely what Boston needs to compete with Brooklyn, Philadelphia, the big time teams in the East. I've heard Bradley Beal tossed around a few times. I've heard other stars. It all depends on what Stevens wants. I have zero clue what direction he's going to want to go in, but the primary thing is they need scoring, and whoever that star is, they need to bring scoring.
I can tell you right now, there's no way Bradley Beal's leaving Washington. He has no interest in leaving. He's committed to that rebuild long term, but definitely if someone's going to become available, as you would think, I mean, especially come playoff time, you never know what could happen once teams get eliminated, but they're going to need somebody, definitely. Now, we're continuing on the player side of this. One of the other players that was really outside of Jason Tatum, who really was the main scoring machine in the Brooklyn series, was Robert Williams. And to me, you're going to have to lock him up long term, because, I mean, he was really the only guy outside, I guess you could say, Tristan Thompson, because the Nets defense and, I mean, basic rec basketball boxing out was so putrid. But like, you were going to have to, that was really the only guy that could go in the paint to mess around with those guys.
Yeah, Rob Williams was a huge factor in that series for the Celtics. It sucks that he had injury issues and had to miss the last couple of games in that series. But yeah, Celtics fans all season were saying they wanted Rob Williams to play more minutes. And when he did get those minutes, he shined. He was really shining all season. And he's going to be a big player for the Celtics. He's a very, very solid big man who I think will just get better as he learns and gains experience from some of these veterans. So hopefully the Celtics do lock him up long term, and hopefully he just continues to grow and get better.
I absolutely agree. I think Robert Williams needs to be secured long term. I believe he had 9 blocks in game 1 when he was completely healthy. An absurd stat, especially when you're paired up with Kevin Durant. I mean, first time in the playoffs, and then you have in the playoffs as a starter, I should say, and then you have pretty much going up against the potential Hall of Famer in Kevin Durant.
James Harden.
And James Harden and Kyrie Irving.
Oh, Harris.
Pretty much everyone in Brooklyn, star stuck, for lack of a better term. But I think Rob Williams needs to be locked up long term. At the center position, I don't know. Maybe power forward. He can swap in and out. I still think they need another center to help complement well. But he's probably the biggest priority for the Celtics and Brad Stevens this offseason.
They need a lot of more bench scoring too. I mean, otherwise you're just relying on, basically, from what I saw, Jason Tatum.
Not too happy with the bench scoring. Grant Williams, no bueno. Jeff Teague, who we took a shot on last season or this upcoming season, was no bueno. Romeo Langford, he's okay. I mean, you have Nesmith, who's beginning to develop, not so bad. You have Pritchard as well, but
Sounds like the Knicks. Everyone's developing.
I think it's a hot mess. Celtics have just been complete missing in the draft the past few seasons, and I think they need veterans that can actually come in and have proven to come off the bench and score. It doesn't matter to me how old they are. If they're proven scorers and can complement the stars that we have, like Brown and Tatum, sign them.
Now, quick take. I'll start here. Does Kemba Walker get traded this offseason? I say no.
No, I don't think so.
If they have them, oh, go ahead.
I don't know. It's tough, but I don't think he does. His contract is a
No one's going to
big
want.
one,
Right.
and it's a talking point definitely. But I just don't think any team is going to be willing to take on that contract that Kemba has.
And he's
The
injury prone.
Celtics might
Right.
try to ship him, and they might throw his name out and just be like, "Hey, what are you looking for, or would you be willing to give us for Kemba?" But ultimately, I don't think he gets traded.
I'm on the same mindset as Alex. I think he's definitely going to be involved in trade talks. Do I think he gets dealt? No. Between his injuries and the massive amount of money he's getting paid, it's just a complete turn away, I guess you could say. It's like the Carson Wentz of NBA. It's just he's getting paid massive amounts of money just to sit the bench with injuries.
Yeah,
so.
but the Eagles got someone to take him.
This is true. This is true. Will anyone take Kemba? Probably not. They're probably just going to ride out his deal, but you never know. Like I said, I have no clue what Brad Stevens is going to do.
Yeah, I mean, after what the joy, sarcastically, that Kyrie Irving gave the Boston fans after saying he's going to stay, made Danny Ainge do a complete 180, which has not worked out so far.
Mm-hmm.
But lastly, before we wrap it up here, so just quickly looking at, well, there's, again, the playoffs are still going on. There could still be candidates to become available as teams get eliminated. But as of right now, looking at the candidates that are available to fill Brad Stevens' spot as head coach, I'm going to say that they're going to go in a experienced role here for a head coach. I don't see them going like a Sam Cassell role that's an assistant. I understand that he played for the Celtics, so there's roots there, but I think they're going someone experienced. Well, it's experienced, meaning I don't think it's going to be Mark Jackson because he's had a million opportunities now and no one has any interest in even getting an interview with him.
Mm-hmm.
But I think you're going to look at someone with experience, whether that be Jason Kidd or Lloyd Pierce was another one that was the former Atlanta coach. I think they're going to go down that road. I'm sure there'll be others that come along as well. I mean, I'm just thinking like Lionel Hollins, even off the top of my head, but I think they're going to go down that road. Because especially if they're going to be in a win now mode, you can't. I understand the Nets did it with a first year head coach, no experience, but I mean that's a little bit of a different circumstance because that was player driven.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't think the Celtics are going to stay in organization for this. I think they'll branch out and find, like you said, Reed, someone who has head coaching experience or coaching experience at the NBA level. I think honestly that'll be the best move for the Celtics because I think they need to just kind of start fresh, start clean. You know, the assistant coaches kind of have the same mindset as Brad Stevens, having coached under him for, the past couple of seasons. I think a fresh new coach will bring in some fresh ideas and a fresh mindset to these players, hopefully.
Could you see a college route? Because I mean that's what Ainge did last time, but
Maybe, potentially. I just don't know how many NCAA coaches are going to be wanting to make transition from college to the NBA.
See, I'm on the route of all experience. The primary reason why I think Brad Stevens was hired almost 9 seasons ago is because that team was still in development when they hired him. So he had that chance to transition as the team was transitioning as well. And then he got to that experience level as a head coach, and his team was already in win now mode, good to go with Tatum, Brown, Kemba, you name the rest of the squad. So now that they have all the pieces together and they need the coaching, they're going to look for someone who has the experience with a winning franchise and can take them to that next level. For me, like you said earlier, Reed, I think Lloyd Pierce is a big name. Excuse me. Jason Kidd, I'm a little iffy about. He's had some not so much success as a head coach.
If you bring in Jason Kidd, he's going to go after Brad Stevens' job.
Yeah,
just like he tried doing in Brooklyn and Milwaukee.
Mm-hmm. I think Lloyd Pierce is probably the biggest name that could have the most potential. We'll see if other names get thrown around, if other coaches are fired and then hired by Boston. the world may never know, but as of right now, I think Pierce is probably the biggest option right now for Stevens.
Yeah. So yeah, that's all we got for right now. But for Alex Green and Brett Chaves, I'm your host, Reed Becker, and thanks for watching. We'll see you next time in a brand new edition of Views from the Booth.